In the darkness, a warm glow begins to emerge, something precious, concealed within weathered hands. For 10,000 years, humanity trusted memory, shells, and clay. Now, around 630 BCE, trust is about to take a new form. Fingers part slowly, revealing shafts of golden light streaming upward like a secret being shared. The Lydian lion stater, 27 centuries old, the first true coin in human history, and the beginning of a revolution that would last to the present day. A merchant in ancient Sardis examines his wealth, not by weight or reputation, but by royal guarantee. Feel the heft of that small disc. That tactile certainty is trust you can hold in your palm. Balance scales confirm what the eye suspects: standardized weight, verified purity, royal promise. The moment of exchange between strangers, no introductions needed. The coin speaks for itself. But it wasn't always this way. As we saw in episode 1, for millennia, humans traded only with people they knew. In the Neolithic village, your word was your bond. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets kept the record. On Yap, stone discs bore witness. Everyone remembered who kept their promises. Then, as the Bronze Age gave way to the Iron Age, trade grew beyond the village walls, and a profound question emerged. Around 630 BCE, this small disk of metal answered that question and changed the course of human civilization. The Architecture of Value, Episode 2, The Material Promise, from 630 BCE to the Fall of Rome. Economists once told us a simple, elegant story about how money began. They called it barter, the direct exchange of goods between people with matching needs. You have golden wheat that I need, I have pottery that you want. So we trade. Simple, clean, logical, one problem solved with a single handshake. But this elegant story has a fatal flaw that economists overlooked for centuries. What happens when I have fresh fish to trade, but you don't want fish? You want grain, not my catch. I need your cloth desperately, but we cannot trade. And my fish is rotting under the Mediterranean sun. By tomorrow, it's worthless. When anthropologists studied actual societies, they discovered something remarkable. Pure barter economies, societies based entirely on direct exchange, never actually existed anywhere in recorded human history. In small communities, people didn't need to barter. They simply remembered. I gave you grain during the last harvest when your crops failed. Next season, when I need help building my home, you'll be there. Trust was stored in human memory in the intricate web of social obligations. It was stored in reputation. Everyone knew who kept their promises and who didn't. This trust lived in the community itself, in relationships built over generations. But then something changed. Villages grew into towns, towns into cities. Suddenly, the marketplace filled with faces no one recognized. How do you extend credit to someone whose family you've never met? How do you trust a stranger who arrived yesterday and might leave tomorrow? Someone with no reputation, no family ties, no community standing? The ancient system of social credit was breaking under its own success. Memory wasn't enough anymore. Reputation couldn't scale to a city of thousands. Trust needed a new container, something that didn't depend on knowing someone's family. Something visible, something you could verify with your own eyes. Something tangible, something you could hold and test and keep. Something that carried its own proof of value, requiring no personal history. No vouching from village elders, no generational memory, just the object itself. The answer would emerge from the golden hills of Anatolia. Lydia, around 630 BCE, a wealthy kingdom in what is now western Turkey, a land of legendary prosperity. The Pactolus River carried more than water. It carried the buttery, pale luster of electrum. This precious metal flowed down from the mountains, free for anyone patient enough to collect it. Workers panned the shallows with wooden bowls, gathering nature's gift, one flake at a time. But this wasn't ordinary gold. It wasn't pure silver either. It was something strange. The Greeks called it electrum, a natural alloy forged by the earth itself, gold and silver intertwined. To the Lydians, this pale metal was a sacred gift from the river gods themselves. Legend said King Midas himself had bathed in these waters, leaving traces of gold behind. Lydian cities grew enormously wealthy on this river treasure. But raw electrum had a maddening problem. Every single transaction required tedious testing and verification. Bite the metal, weigh it carefully, scratch its surface, question its purity. How much gold was in this particular nugget? How much silver? No one could be certain. Commerce ground to a crawl, exhausted by endless skepticism. There had to be a more efficient way to conduct trade. And then around 630 BCE, someone had a revolutionary idea. What if the king himself guaranteed the metal? What if royal authority replaced individual doubt? The Lydian king summoned his finest craftsmen to the palace workshops. These were master metalworkers, the most skilled artisans in the ancient world. Their faces bore the weathered confidence of men who had spent lifetimes perfecting their craft. Their task was unprecedented: create something the world had never seen before. A hardened bronze die, carved with exquisite precision. The master craftsman bent over his work, chisel in hand, carving an image into the metal. Slowly, a roaring lion emerged from the bronze, symbol of Lydian royal power. This was no mere decoration, it was the mark of sovereign authority. Above the lion's eye, they carved a mysterious sunburst, the personal symbol of the king himself. 2 dies prepared, upper and lower, the stage was set for something miraculous. The forge glowed with intense heat, the moment of creation approached. A carefully weighed lump of electrum, exactly 14.7 grams, sat on the lower die. The craftsman raised his iron hammer high, muscles tensed for the crucial blow. Strike. The craftsman lifted the fresh disc, still warm from the violent impact of creation. A lion snarled from the golden metal face, the world's first standardized coin. This wasn't just metal anymore. It was a promise stamped in permanent form. Compare the raw nugget to this new creation. Chaos transformed into order. Uncertainty hammered into certainty, doubt replaced by royal guarantee. The Lydian lion, guaranteed by a state, trusted by strangers. The king examined the first coins with deep satisfaction. His revolutionary idea had worked. This small disc represented something profoundly new in human history. It was the king's word made tangible, his honor stamped into metal that would outlast him. Every coin carried the full weight of royal authority. One glance at the lion told you everything. No testing needed, no questions asked. The roaring lion declared to the world, "Trust this metal as you would trust the throne." Markets transformed almost overnight as the implications became clear. Strangers could now trade with confidence in mere seconds. No weighing, no biting, no endless negotiation about purity. The coin spoke for itself, and its word was the king's word. Commerce accelerated, wealth multiplied, prosperity spread through the kingdom. Lydia grew richer than any kingdom before it, and the secret was simple, standardized metal. Word of this Lydian innovation spread along the ancient trade routes during the 6th century BCE. Merchants carried the coins, and more importantly, they carried the idea. Westward to the Greek city-states, eastward to the vast Persian Empire. Each kingdom that encountered coinage immediately recognized its power. The Greeks, by the 5th century BCE, added their own symbols, the owl of Athena watching over commerce. Gods and heroes gazed from metal faces, projecting divine authority. The Persians, by the late 6th century BCE, minted gold darics bearing the image of their great king. The idea couldn't be contained within any single border. Coinage was conquering the ancient world, one trade route at a time. The concept leaped eastward to Persia, carried by merchants and diplomats. It spread westward to Greece, where every city-state minted their own proud designs. The Athenian owl became recognized everywhere, the first truly international currency. Coins became more than money. They became messengers of power and propaganda. Political authority you could carry in your pocket, spend in distant lands. Each ruler understood, stamp your face on the metal, and your image lives forever. Alexander the Great, in the 4th century BCE, spread Greek coinage all the way to India. Rome would eventually carry it further still, to the edges of the known world, but that was centuries away. But what of the original inventors? What became of Golden Lydia? The kingdom's fate was about to take a dramatic turn. King Croesus of Lydia around 560 BCE. His very name became a proverb for unimaginable wealth. Rich as Croesus, people said, and meant the richest man who had ever lived. Croesus perfected the Lydian monetary system with gold coins of unprecedented purity. He created history's first bimetallic currency, separate gold and silver denominations. Gold for major transactions between kingdoms, silver for daily commerce among citizens. The Lydians had refined their invention to near perfection. But perfection breeds confidence, and confidence often breeds recklessness. Croesus looked eastward toward the rising Persian Empire of Cyrus the Great with ambitious eyes. He consulted the oracle at Delphi, who delivered a famously ambiguous prophecy. If Croesus attacked Persia, a great empire would fall. The oracle spoke true. But even infinite gold has limits when facing superior strategy. Cyrus the Great of Persia marched his armies westward towards Sardis. All of Croesus's legendary wealth could not buy victory against Cyrus the Great. Gold coins scattered across the battlefield, wealth without power to save its owner. Lydia fell around 546 BCE. Croesus was captured. The wealthiest kingdom became a Persian province. The inventor of coinage was conquered by those who adopted his invention. Kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall, their names fade into forgotten history. But the Lydian idea proved more durable than Lydian walls. The conquerors eagerly adopted what they had conquered. The invention survived its inventors. Meanwhile, half a world away, during those same centuries, another civilization faced the exact same problem. China, during the Zhou dynasty, around the same era as Lydia. An ancient civilization completely separate from the Mediterranean world. No trade routes connected Chinese merchants to Lydian goldsmiths. No traveler carried news of lion-stamped coins across the vast steppes. Yet Chinese society faced the identical challenge, how to trust strangers in commerce. Their solution began not with mountain gold, but with treasures from the sea. Cowrie shells, lustrous, beautiful, naturally rare, became China's first money. Merchants counted these shells with the delicate care of handling precious jewels. But shells had a fatal weakness that metal would never share. Fragile. One drop onto stone, one careless moment, and wealth shattered into fragments. Chinese craftsmen recognized the problem and devised an ingenious solution. Cast the cowrie shape in durable bronze, preserve the familiar form, eliminate the fragility. Side by side, natural shell and bronze copy, identical appearance, radically different durability. Then Chinese innovation took an even stranger turn. Money began to take the shapes of the tools that built civilization itself. Bronze spades, miniature versions of the farming implements that fed empires. Bronze knives, the tools of craftsmen now serving as currency. The objects that created value became symbols of value themselves. These bronze tools could be made perfectly uniform, every piece identical. But tool-shaped money had a practical problem. It was awkward to carry. Then came the elegant solution that would endure for 2,000 years. Round coins with square holes in the center. String them together on a cord, easy to carry, easy to count, easy to store. 1,000 cash coins on a single string, a merchant's fortune, portable and secure. The square hole wasn't mere decoration, it was pure functional engineering. Round exterior for smooth handling, square hole for stable stringing. But there was deeper meaning in this simple design, meaning rooted in Chinese cosmology. The circle represented the heavens, endless and eternal, rotating above the world. The square hole represented the earth, stable and fixed, the foundation beneath. By holding the coin, the merchant held the cosmic trinity, heaven, earth, and man united. Emperor Qin Shi Huang standardized this design across his unified empire in 221 BCE, 5 centuries after the first Lydian coin. This cash coin design lasted longer than any other currency in human history, over 2 millennia from 221 BCE until the early 20th century. East and West, 6th century BCE and 5th century BCE, no contact, no shared knowledge, no cultural exchange. Yet both arrived at the same fundamental answer to the same fundamental problem. Small metal discs that carried trust between strangers. The Lydian lion and the Chinese cash coin. Different symbols, different metals. Identical purpose, identical human need. This parallel invention reveals something profound about the nature of money. Money isn't arbitrary, it isn't cultural accident, it's a solution to a human problem. The problem of trusting people you've never met and may never see again. Metal answered that problem everywhere humans gathered in large numbers. Gold in Lydia, bronze in China, silver in Greece, each culture found their way. Each arrived at the same destination, a portable promise, a tangible trust. This is what money truly is, not wealth itself, but a vessel for moving wealth. A technology for cooperation between strangers. For the first time in human history, people could work together without knowing each other. Across languages, across cultures, across vast distances. All because someone stamped a piece of metal with a symbol of authority. Human beings everywhere needed the same thing, portable, verifiable trust. And they found it by embedding that trust into physical objects. But every great invention carries within it the seeds of its own corruption. The Greeks built their golden age on the solid foundation of silver coinage from roughly 500 to 300 BCE. Athenian owls, those watchful coins, funded the first democracy the world had ever seen in the 5th century BCE. The Parthenon rose on the Acropolis, paid for by silver from the mines of Laurium. Philosophy and commerce flourished together in the bustling Athenian agora. Citizens could afford the leisure to debate and think because trade generated such wealth. But while Greece debated philosophy, a new power was rising in Italy from the 4th century BCE onward. Rome began as a small city-state on 7 hills around 750 BCE, but it possessed limitless ambition. Roman coins were crude at first, irregular lumps of bronze called rude. But Romans were practical learners who studied and improved what they conquered. They examined Greek coinage and created something perfectly suited to their imperial vision. The silver denarius, introduced around 211 BCE, efficient, portable, and stamped with the unmistakable authority of Rome. With this coin, Rome could project power across continents and sustain armies far from home. Legions marching to Gaul, to Britain, to Egypt, all paid in reliable silver denarii. A soldier's loyalty was purchased with consistent payment month after month, campaign after campaign. As long as the silver was good, the legions would fight and die for Roman glory. And with those loyal legions, Rome conquered the entire Mediterranean world. Gaul fell, Egypt fell, Britain fell, Spain fell, all became Roman provinces. Tribute flowed from every corner of the empire back to the eternal city. The treasury overflowed with coins from 100 conquered nations. At its peak, Rome was the wealthiest, most powerful state the world had ever seen. Emperors commanded with absolute confidence, masters of the known world. The denarius was trusted everywhere, 95% pure silver under Augustus, who reigned from 27 BCE to 14 CE. Roman coins were accepted from Scotland to Syria, from the Rhine to the Sahara. But empires are expensive, and Rome's expenses never stopped growing. Every emperor faced the same impossible arithmetic. More soldiers required more silver. The treasury that once overflowed began to show alarming gaps. The temptation that has destroyed every currency in human history first took hold in Rome around the 2nd century CE. If we add just a little copper to the silver, who would even notice? The coins would look the same, feel nearly the same, but stretch so much further. Mint officials followed their orders, compromising the metal one batch at a time. The debased coins looked identical, same size, same imperial portraits, same official stamps. But they weren't the same. Each generation of coins contained a little less silver. Merchants began to notice something felt wrong. The coins seemed lighter, somehow diminished. Prices started rising, slowly at first, then faster and faster as confidence eroded. Unease spread through the markets like a slow fever. Something was deeply wrong with the money. The same coin that once bought a week's grain now barely purchased a single day's bread. This is the decay of texture, that inevitable decline. By the 3rd century CE, it was accelerating across the Roman world. By the late Empire, around 300 CE, the denarius was almost worthless, base bronze with the thinnest silver wash. Soldiers examined their degraded pay with doubt, anger, and a sense of betrayal. Was this debased metal worth the danger of battle, worth dying on distant frontiers? Some provinces abandoned imperial coins entirely and returned to barter. The commercial unity that coinage had created began to fracture and fail. And so we return to where we began, the material promise. A simple object transformed how human beings relate to one another. For the first time, strangers could trust strangers across any distance. Not because of personal knowledge or family reputation or community bonds, but because of what they held in their hands, metal stamped with authority. From these simple beginnings, vast networks of trade emerged across continents. Wealth could accumulate, flow, and transform entire civilizations. Empires rose on rivers of gold and silver, and empires fell when those rivers ran thin. The same pattern repeating across centuries and continents. Trust built through careful standardization, trust broken through desperate debasement. Money created to solve human problems. Money corrupted when those problems grew too large. The Lydian lion, the Chinese cash coin, the Roman denarius all answered the same question. How can strangers cooperate without knowing each other? The answer was always the same. Find something both parties can trust. Stamp it with authority, standardize its weight, guarantee its purity. Then watch as commerce flourishes and civilization advances. This is the architecture of value, built not from stone but from shared belief. But our story is far from over. 1,000 years will pass, Rome will fall, new empires will rise. Next time on the architecture of value, we leap forward a millennium to the 15th century. The same story plays out with different faces, different continents, but identical human hungers. Conquistadors who crossed oceans in the 1490s, chasing rumors of cities paved with gold, their eyes reflecting imagined treasure, El Dorado, the gilded dream. A myth that would murder millions in its pursuit. But what they found was not gold. It was something almost as valuable. Cerro Rico, the rich mountain, containing more silver than the world had ever seen. The mountain that would reshape the global economy forever. Look closely at the piece of 8, the Spanish silver dollar. 2 pillars with a ribbon wrapped around them. The Pillars of Hercules. That ribbon would evolve into a symbol you know very well. The dollar sign. But the story of Spanish silver is written in blood as much as metal. Wealth extracted at a human cost almost too terrible to comprehend. The true price of the world's first global currency. We witness the birth of modern economics and modern exploitation. Episode 3, The Silver Empire, from 1450 to 1700, How One Mountain Reshaped the World. Coming soon. The Architecture of Value. Exploring how humanity forged trust from rivers and mountains across 30 centuries and counting. Written and produced with extensive historical research. All visualizations are AI-generated historical reconstructions for educational purposes. Sources and scholarly references available in the description below. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to continue the journey. Copyright and attribution notices. Additional resources and reading list in description. The Architecture of Value, from 10,000 BCE to the present day. How money shaped our world and continues to shape it today. See you in Episode 3, The Silver Empire.